topic authoring, why bother? We really appreciate all of you taking time to join us. As our title suggests, our emphasis today is going to be on why you want to make topic-based authoring a part of your content strategy. We're not going to be emphasizing as much how-to, but really the why behind it. And so we'll be defining topic-based authoring to help you understand not only the benefits of this approach, but we'll also walk you through some critical steps to define and implementing a successful program. So we have a little bit more introduction. I see a lot of familiar companies, not so many names of folks that I've met, but a lot of familiar companies. But let me just take a minute to introduce myself. I'm Joan LaSalle, and I'm founder and president of LaSalle Ramsey, and we work with our clients to help them connect their customers through content and learning. So we do a broad range of projects around high-tech new product introduction. This has been really a major part of our practice has been helping our clients move to structured authoring, and that includes using XML and a number of different approaches to authoring and managing content. Ours often include partners, and we have a long collaboration with Linda Urban of Linda Urban Communications, and we're also a training partner of Just Systems, who many of you know provides XML, which is a premier XML authoring tool. Many of you may be using that today. So why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Thanks, Joan. I'm a consultant, and as many of you will know, that sometimes involves wearing a lot of different hats. One of those that I do is work with writing teams who are looking to their skills and create more content that's both more useful and more usable, whether it's for performance support like on help systems and documentation or instruction. My focus these days is a lot on the upfront part of stuff to really understand what's the need before we create content or instruction, and what's actually going on in the workplace where people want to make use of what we develop. Joan mentioned we've had a chance to partner together a lot over the years, and I'm really happy to be partnering today with Just Systems to present this webinar. Talk came out because you and I both work with people who often make the shift to topic-based authoring and also to DITA. As we'll talk a little bit, those are not necessarily synonymous. But and it seems to be a lot of recognition that there's a lot of benefits that can come from a topic-based approach, a modular approach to content. Getting the real benefits from it is often challenging, and we see groups making shifts and yet still trying to figure out how to really get the best return. And there's the things that seem to consistently trip groups up, and wind up talking about why is it that these things keep getting in the way. So we put this talk together in the hope to find a way to talk about what does it really take to make use of a topic-based approach, to get benefits from it that people are seeking. Go ahead.
Oh, right. Go ahead. I was going to say that we're really interested to know who's on the call with us and why you chose to come to this presentation. So you saw the announcement, it got sent out, and you decided to sign up and to join the call. And so what brought you here today, and what are you hoping that we will cover? I think that will help us as we're doing the presentation. We're hoping that we can make this an informal conversation and try and include you as well. So if you want to type in some ideas about why you joined this call, that would be great. I don't know if you want to take some time to just a minute to do that right now, just to give us an idea of what brought you here and what you're looking to get out of the presentation. Like we currently works in topic-based authoring and is looking to validate the methods. And,
interested in the human aspects of things also, so maybe what it takes to make it happen from the person's side.
I see a question here about tools. Some of the things that we want to do is maybe just try and capture this through a little bit through a poll, see if we've got some trends or major groups of folks who are joining us. And so, Avi, you want to put up the poll and maybe tell us where you are in the process. Select one of these on your poll. So we have the poll up. And 5 choices here. Let us know that you're just investigating or you know you want to implement it. You need to learn more. You're currently in DITA, and that's made topic-based authoring more critical. You're also us, or you're now maybe moved, just kind of converted existing content into DITA, but you want to really fine-tune it and rework it in a topic-based approach. So just take a minute to respond. And maybe you can just be monitoring that and let us know when it looks like everyone has responded.
Yeah. Waiting for a couple more.
Writing in the chat, so some people new to topic-based authoring, people really already shifting into DITA. I see a long-term DITA shop, just interested in find out what other people are doing.
All right.
So to help juniors coming in. Interesting use. Okay, interesting, good collection of stuff. Right, how to guide clients through reorienting their authors. That's an important one.
All right, so we take a look at the results.
Great. So I'm not seeing them yet.
5 seconds, it's just closing up.
Okay, great.
There we go.
Okay, so it looks like
3 are in the top 2 categories. They're investigating and want to implement.
right.
So,
And some to use, but not by any means all.
right.
Yeah, good. That's very helpful to have that perspective.
Right, and focus our comments in that direction. And if you want to move ahead in preparing this talk, we really thought about who the talk is for. And I think that the poll suggests that we've got a lot of folks that are right at the beginning of the process. They're investigating, they've made a decision, and they know they want to move forward. And I think this talk is definitely for you, because we have a lot of, one of the things that Linda mentioned is we talked about what are the things that trip people up, and we feel like there are some things at the front of the process that make a big difference in the success of your overall implementation. So we'll definitely be talking about that. But also, if you're already in DITA and XML, we're going to be addressing some things that come up along the way with that. And we're going to do that by really finding some terms and identifying benefits. So looking again at what is topic-based authoring, and then the benefits, again, the why, and using your problems, the opportunities in businesses. How does topic-based authoring really relate to helping you solve some of your challenges? And like Linda said, really the common pitfalls, the things that seem to be missing out of implementations that we see kind of over and over and over again. So sharing with you some of the issues that we see coming up with, based on work that we've done with clients. And then finally, just saying 70 ideas that we want to leave you with as major takeaways from this presentation to help your topic-based authoring implementation be more successful. And again, Linda and I want to make this a kind of conversation between the two of us. We're going to be going back and forth and maybe even interrupting each other, but we also want, if questions come, we'll address them at the end, but if questions come up, if you want to put them in chat, we'll be monitoring that and potentially try to address them as we're going through.
Okay, so we thought we'd start just by doing a little bit of review and clarifying terms and addressing this question that I hear a lot, based authoring. It's been around a long time. It's hardly new. So why so much buzz now? And it's been around for decades. And I worked on content that I didn't know at the time. There wasn't something that people called topic-based authoring. In the 80s, really a structured kind of writing of developing consistent information in modular pieces. It's very central to online help. So those of you out there who've been developing online help, you work in topics. A lot of the impetus for really crafting it came of early work on information design and research on cognition and learning. There's a guy named Mayer who's done a lot of research on what helps people learn. And I'm going to get the name of his here, signaling principle, that it is what talks about why seeing patterns and why having repetitive elements to signal to people that what the information is and that it's presented consistently, why it really makes a difference from the cognitive side. And the research that John Carroll did really focused on getting people to the information they need, the right amount of information, not all the information, the right amount of information at the right time. So the ideas for topic-based authoring came out of a lot of that kinds of research. And it's not necessarily DITA. These days you see so much stuff that links topic-based to DITA. Really that's because DITA is topic-based central. But a topic-based approach doesn't necessarily have to mean DITA or XML for that matter.
Great. Just as kind of an aside, Linda and I have been doing this for a long time, and we've also both had a fair amount of training in usability testing. One of the things that came out of, for those of us that got involved in online help when it was first being developed, is that people weren't using online help because every help system was developed differently. So having these kinds of patterns in the thing that you do and the content that you're delivering really helps people use it from a learning perspective and also from a cognitive processing perspective. They don't want to have to think about things. They just go directly to the information that they need. And so what topic-based authoring is really a writing technique that supports that learning theory and also a lot of the information around usability and also just information presentation and information presentation. It's a writing technique. It's a way to write and structure content. It is a move away from linear, which is the book, to a very component, object-oriented style of writing, so it's very modular. Information is presented in very small, discrete modules. People can access on and can stand alone as a piece of information. So the idea that people need specific information at a specific time, and you're focusing and targeting on just the information that they need. Generally about one specific subject, and that's one of the ways that people go about defining their topics, is that you think about it can answer a question. So you think about a user, and you think about a user coming to a piece of information or a piece of content, think about it answering a question for that user, and then, of course, understanding what is the question that they need to have answered. What is it that they're doing? What's the performance objective that they have? What's the problem they're trying to solve? that you're going to be able to answer with that piece of information. Consistent pattern is really important. It's important from the things that Linda was talking about, the perspective of cognitive information processing, cognitive, and also learning theory. So adult learning theory and how people process information really supports this following a consistent pattern. People don't want to have to think about, deconstructing the information. They want to just go directly to the information. And so having that very, very defined pattern to the way that you present the information is extremely important in ease of use. And again, from the process of learning theory, dividing the information into different types of information. So the concept, task, the reference. But of course, those are three basic types, but you can have more specific types as well. You can have specific types of tasks. You can have specific types of reference information. So it depends on the type of information that you have, you're presenting, and understanding your own information. So there's some general kinds of ways that people group and classify information, but there'll be things that will be very, very specific to the type of information that you're developing. So I think that you have some examples of topics and topic-based authoring that you can share.
Yep, I do. Before we go on to that, I just want to zero in on one, pick up from something you were saying, which is, I think gets to one of the sometimes problems that companies have, and it's that key piece about having this content be oriented for the people. When you approach topic-based authoring, or if you approach DITA, you're suddenly going to be hearing a lot about separating content into things like concepts, tasks, reference. And sometimes it's really easy to just want to go through existing content and say, oh, here's a conceptual chunk, here's a task chunk, let's just draw lines there. But if you have thought about having those chunks actually be the chunks that will answer a person's question, you can miss the boat. So we've an example here really of this shift, two up. Actually, this is I forgot about this one. Just to show you from where this comes from, this is actually a slide from a class I first taught in 1999 on developing online help. And it's showing how to write a task and the kinds of patterns that you'll learn about today in writing topic-based authoring, writing topics. It has a consistent pattern. It tells you to start with a heading, a little bit of intro. If you're in DITA, that's your short description, numbered steps, references at the bottom. This might be the kind of pattern you'd put in an information model to help people see when we write tasks, here's the pattern that we want to use. So this is sort of a topic at its simplest. A linear content to modular. This example actually draws from a student of mine, Sarika Sharma, who kindly allowed me to show it. And she started with a pretty standard linear document that she was learning to create as a technical writer, consistently, clearly putting the information out there. But it's a linear content. And if you take a look on this top page here, you'll see it has a very typical kind of sentence in there. It says the following sections explain in detail the actions to do on each sheet of the Excel file to generate a project plan. So it's talking about following sections. Integrated into the content are references to things that come before and after. It's explaining things with the assumption that people have a document and they're reading a lot of it. To that, and this is a really common situation for people to have lots of content that's this kind of an approach in one way or another, and begin to break it into distinct topics that can stand alone and work separately, takes some reshifting. And so in this case, we worked from that original linear document and moved the content into a help system to the pieces into topics that could stand alone separately. And see a sample of a process topic. So it's a process overview for how to generate these project plans. She had other topics that were very task-based. This task now stands alone, no reference to what comes before or after. It could be moved around. You could, again, a kind of pattern here. You're doing your little intro piece. In this case, you've got a chunk for prerequisites that someone would need to do in advance, and then how to write their content. When I'm working with people just learning about this approach, what I often tell them in terms of thinking about these patterns and developing information models is really you're coming up with a templated approach. If you bring somebody new in, you can essentially say, okay, you're going to write the information about this set of tasks that people need to do. When you go to write the instructions, here's the pattern we want you to follow. When you instructions, do it this way. When you develop reference information, here's the reference pattern that we want to follow. So you see the pattern here. So let's take a shift now from the what is topic-based and take a look at why you might want to. Why does anybody looking for a change to a different approach to their writing?
So we have some things that are listed here that are common challenges in what we're calling the content landscape. So these are more business challenges or higher level challenges. They're not necessarily writing challenges. I have to get this product documented for this release. These are more issues that are coming up for all of us today and the businesses that we work in. So if you look on this map, if you will, of the challenges that we're seeing our customers have, see if you fit into any of these categories. Customer experience is something we hear a lot about. The move to agile development processes is something moving from that waterfall linear model that worked really well with a release of books. That work as well when you move to agile. All of us are up against do more with less and shorter cycles. We work in a global economy that makes a difference in terms of how we work from a workflow perspective, all of these things. So just take a look around and see if any of these fit into the challenges that you're really having to meet on a basis from a business perspective. And we're going to try and capture that in a second poll. Bobby, if you can put up the second poll for us that talks about these challenges. And in this particular poll, you can respond to as many of these as fit your business. So it may be all of them. It may be or two of them. There may be one that is particularly important challenge. Oftentimes in businesses, we have a real high-level goal in the business to focus on customer experience or to focus on a global initiative. That will be a primary thing that we are really challenged to meet. So if there's some of these things that really stand out for you as business challenges, if you could mark those. And of course, if there's something else, please into the chat so that we can find out about some other challenges that are really important to you today.
So a couple of things that looks like were directed to us as panelists rather than everyone for the other category. So a question about how it supports Agile. One for mix and match information assets. Supporting different tenants who have different content for the same web application. Oh, that's an interesting one. Database integration, reduction in error. Publish from one source to several different outputs. Yep.
So
and
doing
someone
help
has,
poll, have we have people responded or are responses still come in?
Still coming in.
Oh,
so we're going to be touching on many of these. I see that we're really not going to get into today. So someone is asking, is there a good chum substitute? Separate separate discussion. Haven't seen one. Seen some of these. I'm not sure that they're there yet. Content types: educational publishers, role-playing game publishers, novels.
topic-based novel.
There you go. We can do the mix and match. What were those mystery books where you got to?
That's right. I was just thinking of that, where you get to pick your ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's someone talking about not a traditional end user, engineer to engineer, lots of technical documents. Good point. And actually, so in some ways, I think that just to speak to that one, consistent presentation of information, I think, is where you're going to get a lot of bang for the buck with engineers. Helping them, I mean, it helps everybody, but particularly for that, help people scan to get to the right stuff. And so dividing things into chunks that are clearly labeled and fit together and are presented consistently, it helps people get to that information faster. Because let's face it, nobody wants to be, well, maybe with the exception of the novels, really nobody wants to be reading most of what we write if we live in the doc world anyway. Okay, results.
Right. And what's our customer experience is the major response, but the others, there are several others that are very close. Shorter product cycles, support agile development, new forms and formats, doing more with less, cutting translation costs. And so I think we've got people that are dealing with a lot of these challenges at the business level. And if we move forward, Linda, we can look at how we can topic-based authoring can address those. And I think that's really interesting with this is that there's a one-to-one relationship. That some of the value and benefits that you get with topic-based authoring is not necessarily aligned just with customer experience or just with shorter product cycles. That, in fact, the benefits of topic-based authoring can in many ways address almost all of these business challenges. And the reason that we wanted you to about it in terms of the business challenge rather than just the benefit of using a topic-based approach from a writing or information development perspective is that the more people understand the benefits to the business of using topic-based authoring, the more successful you're going to be in convincing others in your organization to adopt it, like you talked about. Someone mentioned engineering. People in tech docs that have writing backgrounds are going to be familiar with some of the concepts of topic-based approach, but engineering folks may not be. So the more that you can explain the value of topic-based approach in terms of the value to the business, the more successful you're going to be in getting people to get into it as a concept and as a direction to go. So consistent content written to address user needs. I think Linda talked about that a little bit when she was talking about the fact that you don't just convert content, but you really target and focus it to meet the needs of a specific user. So that can improve the customer experience, and it can certainly address the issue of supporting new and varied output formats. As with the modular topic The fact that it's modular addresses, I think, really all of these things. It allows for shared authoring, which can really help an agile development process. It can do more with less. It can help you shorten production cycles because you have a lot more flexibility with your workflow model and with how you manage your content. The same thing with reduce, reuse, and repurpose. We're able to reuse content and reduce it, reduce the amount of content that you're actually writing. I think one of the things, if you go back to the example that Linda brought in first from the student in her class, you could see from that example that actually there was a lot of text that was removed. She pulled out a lot of text that was what is sometimes called text. It's a kind of text that is transition text. If you
standalone modules, you're removing a lot of that. And if you understand who your audience is, sometimes people can use metrics to find out what information people are actually using. Since you can really reduce the amount of content they're actually writing, which can make it much more efficient if you're working in a more topic modular type approach. And publishing to multiple outputs. When you're in, sometimes you will have complete topics that may be published to a health facility or integrated into the product itself. You may have a subset of that you want to publish out to a mobile application that might be used for a subset of users, or they might be accessing in a more kind of way. So having the ability to do that kind of mixing and matching, to have that ability to target different output devices, to target different types of users, to work, allows you to work cross-functionally and to get a lot more value out of the content that you're writing. So Lynn, I'll add to that.
Yes, thanks. What's just occurring to me is one of the things that I think often gets overlooked as people begin to rework their content and think about topics is it can seem as though every single topic that they're creating now needs to be modular, needs to be ready to be reused. And in fact, you're writing content that can be reused, but you're going to have some topics that are context specific. You know, if you imagine that your most recent user guide or admin guide or operator guide has been chunked very neatly into the specific tasks and reference pieces, getting ready to serve it up and deliver it to different people, whoever is putting together a publication and saying, here's the set we want for this document, here's the set we want for this document that customer support will send out, here's the set of information that we want to deliver to people's mobile devices. Someone may well want to put on the hat of saying, okay, where is this information going? And for the use, what are the additional topics that are going to help my users make sense of this? When I work with teams, the term that I've come up with is a navigational topic. It's a piece that has a little bit of information and helps them see what's coming. So you're grappling with this particular problem. You know, here's a selection of topics that can help you address that and provides the appropriate links to concepts and tasks. You're getting started for the first time with this task. Here's the pieces that you need together. So as you're dividing it, you may well also have some additional topics that are really, their purpose is to help people make sense of that content. Before you leave this and go on, I just wanted to take a glance back at the list of questions people had been scanning, adding into that, and see if there were any that weren't in our common challenges. You know, different people contributing to the same web app. Really, so I guess the point there would be you could have multiple audiences creating different content that could then be pulled up and fed out. And if you're creating modular topics, there's the possibility for that. A different issue here for when someone is saying that their parent company is overseas. as a language barrier and the fact that they actually can't get into the content management system to work yet. Different of challenge. It sounds like be a challenge even if you're in topics. Maybe that's one that we can speak to when we get back to talk a little bit about business goals. Maybe there can be some angles there.
I would jump in, Linda, and just say so that if you can't get into the CMS is right. That's a different issue. But topic authoring, I think, is a direction that people that are in global organizations that are having content being written by multiple organizations through on a global basis, where you have a team that is an intact team working together. They're going this direction because of the structure and because you can say, this is how we want this written, how we want that written. And you can get that consistency so that you're speaking to the customer with one voice. You can use consistent data models and templates and things like that with a global organization. So once you can work out those differences of getting access to things, I think topic-based authoring is a great direction for you to go and to push for.
So I'm going to go on. I see some other challenges out there, like DITA-fying outside content. But for many of these, I think the thing to remember is that it isn't happening in a vacuum. And when I wind up working with teams, working with them about this internal flow where they're defining information models, they're analyzing their content and deciding how to rechunk it into different types of information, tasks, reference, troubleshooting, concept. They're reworking it. And there's a big flow in here that's really sort of writer-centric that doesn't exist in a vacuum. And before you get to that, if you have the option to do it before, if you are already in place and you need to step back and take the opportunity to think about what's the bigger situation in which you're working. And the two pieces that really matter there are clarifying the purpose and goals. This is at multiple levels. The purpose and goals for your department, for your the vision that your department reports to, for the company itself. Why do they care? Why does your content matter to them? What purposes should it be accomplishing? And who are the people who are going to use it, and to really understand their needs. Why are they coming to your content? What do they need to take away from that? And to shape all of this inside work about information models, topic type patterns, reworking content, really it's existing in the context of both your business purpose. And it's really key to have that perspective. And of course, over here you've got the, once you've created, you're going to connect the content and publish it out. That's going to feed back in. I mean, you get deliverables. It needs to meet the needs of these people. Jump to that, or shall I go on to the next one?
Just a short piece, because I want to be aware of time, and we've got a lot of questions that come in. I want to be sure we have plenty of time for discussion at the end. But just really re-emphasizing what Linda's saying about really understanding the audience needs and understanding the business goal that you're trying to support, or the change that you are working toward, is, I think, a piece that just we can't emphasize enough how much you need to be able to answer the why. Why am I doing this? There are questions that, a couple of questions that came up about it's a good tool to use, a good approach to use for certain kinds of things. And it isn't. It's not a panacea. So the more you understand why it is that you're doing it and what the problem is that you're trying to solve, the more you get stronger buy-in for it, and the more that you'll be able to have the resources required to really do a complete implementation and do a really good job with this. So just don't, as writers, we tend to jump and want to get the job done and really focus on the word and the words and crafting the message. But in this larger picture, especially when you move to DITA, you're really building an information system. Building an information system that may be shared across an enterprise. And that means that you have to be very, very clear about why you're doing it and what the benefit is to the business, not only to you as a writer.
Okay, so things that tend to get overlooked, and really the first one is just what Joan was just talking about. Really getting a clear definition of what it is you want to accomplish by using a topic-based approach. What does the business want to accomplish? And the larger companies who have lots of legacy information, it's a matter of having to choose where are you going to start and how far are you going to go. And to make those decisions, you need the priorities from the business and from the users. Which content matters the most? What is it you need to do the most? Is it most important to look for reads in ways that will help you reduce translation costs? Is it most important to get your users to be productive faster? You know, what are the real drivers? With that, how will you know if you've been successful? So it's important to sit front, want to back and measure this later. How am I going to know? And measure doesn't only have to mean numbers, but really how are you going to gauge it? Is it going to be customer satisfaction? Is it going to be reduced costs? Is it going to be a more efficient workflow and smoother things within the company for information going back and forth? What are your drivers? Joan, you want to take this one?
Sure. Thanks. So I think that a lot of times one of the people don't really take time to do is really analyzing their content. And I think that's a lot because many think, well, I've written a lot of this content. Why do I need to take a step back and analyze it? But I think that is, again, just a really important piece. Over and over again, Linda's emphasized the need to do more than just break your content into chunks or to do a conversion to Excel. This is really an opportunity to take a step back and look for really do an assessment of what is the work your content is doing, both for the user, your audience, and for the business, and how you can make that, how you really reorganize it and re-architect it to do a better job of meeting your goals and to streamline your process. Are you writing content that's just simply not being used or is no longer needed? Business has changed a lot in the last 5 years, certainly the last 10 years. If you have a legacy set of documents that have been around for 10 years or even longer, this is a great opportunity to say, is this content really needed? Are we really delivering information in the most effective and efficient way? So really rethinking the content, analyzing what you have, figuring if there are things that you can get rid of, figuring out if there are parts of it that you want to move to topic-based authoring, but maybe other parts that you don't have to or that you don't need to. I think that's a really important thing. And certainly if you're looking at reuse, analyzing your content is going to tell you whether you have opportunities for reuse or whether opportunities for reuse are really very, very small.
So this next one, who wants to hear this, but it's going to take time you think it's going to take longer. If you're a lone writer and you're really efficient and swift, this won't be the case. But as soon as you're into a group, there's a lot that's involved. There's the analysis of the content and of business goal and user need. There's picking a tool. There's training, both on techniques and tools, designing your information model, building a prototype. And this is an iterative process. As you figure out the topic-based approach that's going to meet your needs, you're working iteratively. You probably want to start with a sample, build it out, get input from users, get input from your stakeholders across business groups. All of that takes time, and what I continue to see is that people want it to take less time than it does. But it's not really, you're going to be working hard, but there's some things that it's really hard to rush. And doing it right up front and actually working out the problems before doing a massive push to simply chunk things into topics and try to get it out there. You can do it your way, but there'll be less pain on the other side to the extent that you can spend the time up front and do as much as you can in the early stages.
Really, and this is, again, another thing that a lot of times people don't realize. It's when you're needing to analyze your content, when you're needing to do tool selection and training, you have to get support. You have support just outside of your organization because it's going to cost money to do it. Anytime you're using resources and spending time, it's costing money. And so you have to get support for doing that. People really have to understand the why. People have to understand the business benefit as well as the benefit internally. And the same thing with your team. Someone is used to writing. They're used to being very successful. They've been told they're doing a good job. All of a sudden, you're asking them to really change maybe the way they're doing something or the way they're writing. You're asking them to follow a more structured, rule-oriented path, perhaps. And they know what's in it for them. They need to know why it is that you want them to do this and what the benefit to the business and the benefit to them is as a writer and in their job. And so that all goes, it loops back up to the top about clearly defining what you want to accomplish, your business, your customer needs, and how you're going to measure it, because that's going to help your team understand why it is that you're doing it. And it's also going to help you get the resources that you need to be successful with it and to build this as a sustainable program. And that just goes to the second part, which is, skills aren't mastered in a 3-day workshop or a 2-day workshop. You need to really figure out how are you going to support and sustain this over time. And those of you that work in the learning community know that we often say learning is a process, not an event. And so the event is your 1 or 2 day workshop. That pulls everybody together and is real focused time to share ideas and get started, and it can really jumpstart a program because there's a lot of energy and emphasis and push around that. Then we all back to work, and you sit down at your job, and all of a sudden you have the press of a schedule, or you have 3 or 4 deliverables that have to go out, and you're all of a sudden what you learned in the falls by side just because you have to get things out the door. So from the perspective of a team member, if you're driving this, or a manager and you want to implement this, you need to have a roadmap to really say, where are we going to focus? How are we going to get this done? What's our time frame for getting it done? And then how am I going to support people as they start to rework? People are going to have questions. Are you going to get those questions answered through peer review? Are you going to have a couple of people on your team that are really chartered with being leads in this, and they're going to review things and give folks feedback? If questions come up about the topics, how will those be resolved? It's going to happen over time, and as Liz said, it's an iterative process. You may have to add things in. You may want to take things out. You may do a very small set of information to begin with and then expand from there. So how's all that going to happen? You need a plan so that you can sustain this. It isn't just a nice event where everybody gets together and gets excited, and then it falls off the radar. So before we move to discussion, we've got 10 minutes left here. I'll walk through these
But here are just some things that we want to leave you with to make sure that you take away from this presentation. It's really 7 things to remember, and you're entering into a topic-based approach to writing. And this is especially important for those of you that are at the beginning of the process. You're considering it, or you've made a decision that you want to implement it, and now you're putting together your plan. You're figuring out how to do it. So, and just understand why it is that you're doing it. It may not be the right, I think Linda said, this is not a panacea. It may not be what you need to adopt, but if you understand why and the benefits that you want to gain from it, then you're going to be much more successful. And don't leave out the steps along the way that you feel like you might, like analyzing your content or linking them to your information model. Taking the time to do that so that you know what content types you're going to have. And not just moving your content, converting your content, but really taking time to rework it so you can get rid of all that extra text and really focus on building consistent topic structures and organizations. Of course, the last 2 things are provide that ongoing support and coaching and feedback for your writers, because it doesn't happen one day or in one sit-down session. You're going to have to iterate. It's a process. You have to come back to it. This course correct, add, and just simply expand. You want to scale it up. Start small. If you're successful, you meet all of your goals, then you're going to want to scale it up. And how are you going to do that? So, Lindsay, you want to add to that final thought?
That's a pretty good summary, actually. I think I could give people a chance to ask some questions, and if we can tell some of what people have put in the chat. One, by the way, somebody was asking if we'll be providing the slides. So there's going to be a recording of this. I think we can probably provide a PDF of the slides.
Right.
We can work out with Avi how the best way to distribute that.
All right.
And I think that's what Just Systems really does. And and Avi will be sending out the link to all of the participants. But Just Systems generally has a knowledge. I think the Knowledge Center, isn't that what it's called, Avi, on their website? And they list all their webinars, and so you can get the full recording with the slides linking to that by linking to that site. But it's also really rich. For a lot of presentations around structured authoring and tools and things like that.
Okay, some questions in. I see here about discussing a bit more about the quality of a good information model. So that gets defined in different ways. For me, it's like really good style guide with tons of examples. And so the model itself would say, here's the types of information that we're going to create. And the samples would be built on the analysis of your needs and your customer needs, so business needs and customer needs, to actually identify, here's how we want our task information to look, our conceptual information to look, the different kinds of reference information we have, to really get clear on those different pieces. And to also think about how are they going to relate. So there's a navigational piece where you decide, in system, in general, how is information going to connect to each other? This comes about through a modeling process, and ideally that gets documented and put in something that would be associated often with a style guide, and that includes samples. It's really easy to put some simple thing together like that slide I had earlier about a very simple task topic. It's a real different thing to then try to apply it to some of the kinds of complex information that people deal with. So you need examples that say, here's got this complex task, here's how we reworked it, here's what we used to have, here now the information model is how it should look. I hope that helps a bit. So
there's a question here about sending, if a chunk of content should be a task, a concept, or a reference topic.
It's the classic question.
It is a classic question. So the task is generally an easy one. It's pretty much focused on how to do something. So if this is information that is telling a user how to do something, and often we think of tasks as being information that could be delivered in a numbered step type of format. So first do this, then do that. It may include the results. It often doesn't include the why, a lot of why information around it. So that information is more contained in the concept topic. Concept topic is around a theory of operation, for example, would be in a concept topic rather than in a task topic. You're not telling someone how to do something. You're telling someone the information behind the design of a product or potentially why you would do something. For example, there's a lot of business intelligence products out now, and in many instances, those will have a lot of concept topics around them because you won't be telling people as much how to do something. You might be telling them how to set up a dashboard or how to configure some sort of display so they can see the information that they have, but there might be a lot of concept information around analyzing the information, for example, and how things are set up, the type of information that's being collected and presented. And reference topics, I think, are, again, they're a little more straightforward and easy to understand. That's really specification type information. Or tabular information is thought of as reference information. If you have any kind of information that's coming out that would be around error message type information, that's all reference information. Setup information, if you have to reply, look at what are the parameters or setting something up, that's often presented in reference information. And reference information should not be included in task information necessarily. You might send somebody or point them to somebody else.
I'll pick that one actually. I see a question about difference between topic-based authoring and task-based authoring. So the way I think about task-based authoring is focusing content on user tasks, meaning what the person does in the workplace, not necessarily just what the tasks are in the software. So a topic-based approach certainly follows from that, but it looks for additional types of information that support tasks and not just step-by-step tasks, but different reasons that people come to content. So in these that Joan was just talking about, the difference between reference and concept and task, you might be, it really depend on your content. You'd be saying, why does someone want to come here? What are they looking for? And so sometimes that information has to do with something that's really procedural in a task-type way, and sometimes it's for other purposes. I think it's task-based authoring, I think, has some very particular definitions in some places, so my guess is that there's some overlaps and some differences. I also just wanted to touch one here on thinking about DocBook versus DITA, suggestions for combining longer narratives. Without, we could take the whole angle of really looking at the DocBook stuff and saying, should this be more topic-like? One thing you might think about when you're thinking about an information model is, for you, would a topic type that makes sense be an article? Maybe some of your content where it's really a more discussive, maybe informal approach, or an article approach, you could certainly have a topic type that is an article, and it's a little looser than some of the other approaches. Go ahead.
I was just going to say there have been some questions that came in about legal documents. And I would certainly apply to that.
Good point.
Where within legal documents you have definite patterns in terms of the type of information that you're presenting. And it's not the same as a software manual or a hardware manual or something around a chipset, something that's more technically oriented, or something that's more manufacturing oriented. You do have distinct types of content that you're presenting, and you could build an information model to support that.
Good point. So seeing some questions about DITA resources, and I have to say, so I'm not a DITA person, a DITA specialist. I really focus more on the writing technique and the crafting the content technique. So I will let Joan answer that one.
Well, I was going to also say, if Linda, if you want to bounce to the last slide, which has our email addresses on it, because we're at the top of the hour here. I do have a list of some resources I can send people. So if you want to email me at joan.lassalle@lr.com, I can point you to some DITA resources and references. I'm happy to do that. Just make note that you attended the webinar, and I can respond to you with a link or with a PDF of a document.
I'll say there's tons of stuff out there also. You'll find enormous numbers of resources. So it's true when getting started and particularly looking for opportunities job-wise, it can feel drowning sometimes in how much information is there. So I think having some pointers from Joan will be good. So 3.
Yeah. I think we do have both of our email addresses up, and if you have further questions, please send them to us. Is it possible for us to capture the chat, and if there are specific that we can address to folks, we try and do that as well.
I'll copy the chat and I'll send it to you guys.
Okay.
Great. Unfortunately, the chat won't actually give us
the email addresses.
Right, it won't give us contact information. So if you're looking for something specific, feel free to get in touch directly.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes. I'll echo. Nice to have all these voices here today, even see chat instead of hearing them.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Everyone for attending.
Have a good day.